Hello and welcome to Sport for Business, where we're joined today by Paul Dermody. He's the Chief Executive of Irish Racing's Racecourse division, and he's here today to talk to us about a survey which was undertaken in February amongst 1,000 members of the Irish population, talking about just what level of engagement they had with horse racing. Now, I see a lot of research numbers, but rarely do my eyes pop out at the extent of change in which we are able to see from the Irish population's the connection into horse racing. Paul, you're very welcome to Sport for Business.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm not joking you. When I saw these figures, the change in 12 months to last year is exceptional. Guide us through some of the high points in it from your point of view.
Yeah, we're thrilled, Rob. Thank you for that. It's been, like all sports and industries, it's been a very unusual 12 or 13 months since the pandemic hit. But we'll take the green shoots when we can get them, and it's been a really positive outcome for us to actually see the research as it's come back. So we've been doing this research for the last 12 years. I suppose the context of it is that we have, in 2019, remember, we launched a strategic plan with a set of priorities to grow the industry and the sport. And from a commercial and marketing perspective, they were primarily around three areas, which was growing the profile of the sport, enhancing the interest levels in the sport, and increasing the attendances at the sport. So profile, we put an awful lot of effort into a rebrand of Horse Racing Ireland, repositioning of HRI's role in promoting and marketing Irish racing, and that has culminated into a TV campaign. So that's the profile piece, and that obviously influences the interest levels. And so we are determined to grow the interest levels significantly over the period of the strategic plan, and the research that we've just received back tells us that we're more than on the way to doing that. Attendance as well, we're at zero at the moment, but hopefully we'll get back to getting people back by the tail end of this year, and we have an objective to get 1.5 million people per annum back into Irish racing. It's at about 1.3 million now.
That's a big number, which would compare to any of the theoretically the big sports of rugby and Gaelic games and football. But the number of people who have expressed an interest in racing, 12 months ago, it was 23%, which you would kind of think, yeah, that's reasonable. That's not out of the bounds of what you'd expect. This year, it was 39%. How can you explain such an exponential growth within the level of interest?
Yeah, I suppose there's a couple of reasons for the significant growth we've seen. I think first and foremost, you're seeing an awful lot more of racing in the last 12 months, be it that promotional and marketing campaign that I spoke about. We returned to TV at the tail end of 2019 for the first time in 10 years. So that's a significant investment. So you're seeing a lot more of us from a promotional perspective. The second reason, I suppose, is COVID related, in that we went behind closed doors from March of 2020. And I suppose the only plus point to that was we were one of the first sports to come back and be permitted to come back. So we've been racing from pretty much every day since the 8th of June then, behind closed doors. That allowed us to have a really great conversation with RT in particular to say, look, we're the only sport back up and running. Can we look at maybe some incremental free-to-air fixtures? So you've seen a lot more free-to-air coverage of racing throughout the summer, thanks to RTE. So you've seen magazine programs on a Friday night with a mix of Kilbeggan and Naas and so on, running into the weekend in Gordon's and Leopardstown and so on. And I suppose then related to that is we were the only sport in town. So there was that, I suppose, that media coverage that went with that would have been a help. And I suppose the last point then, I think that is very important, is that, we can't forget the success of the jockeys, the horses and the trainers, and indeed the owners that we have with our sport. So we've continued to dominate Internationally, you know, you had the success of Aidan O'Brien and the Ballydoyle team, William Mullins, Paul Townend. But then as well as that, we've had horses of a generation, Tiger Rolls, Honeysuckles, Faughines. Have all been in the last 12 months. So I think all of those things together have probably contributed to that growth.
They have, but the timing of this, it was done in February. So it was coming off the back of the Dublin Racing Festival, which did get a lot of coverage, and RTE gave us a very good shout. But it was before Cheltenham. It was before Rachael Blackmore moved from being a very good jockey known by those who would know what Irish racing was about into being an international superstar. It was before she then went on to win at Aintree. So how high could those numbers go? If 39% of people are interested in it before all of that happened, where's the ceiling?
Yeah, as you can imagine, there was plenty of those conversations internally over the last few weeks. We were, on one hand, delighted with the research we've seen that came back from Red Sea, which was captured mid-February, as you say. What could it have been after the 4 weeks we had, which were absolutely unforgettable? Who knows? I mean, I think that's the challenge we have as an organization and as a group of racecourses, and I mean all 26 racecourses, is how do we capitalize on that? How do we make sure we take it to the next level? How do we wrap ourselves around the superstars that we have, both equine and human? None more so perhaps at the moment than Rachel. You know?
An obvious question is what metric you can use to judge the success of how interest translates into something which is going to be good for the sport. In football, in racing, or in football, in rugby, in Gaelic games, in swimming, in basketball, you can judge it by the number of kids that are coming in and taking part. You can judge it by any number of different metrics. But in racing, it's a closed circuit, really, in the sense that, people aren't going to just get up and get out and start riding racehorses. So you've got attendance, which is an obvious one, but being part of the ownership journey is part of it as well. And again, from this figure, 40%, 400 out of 1,000 people that you interviewed said that they would have an interest in being part of a syndicate or an ownership group. Is that something that surprised you?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways we can measure how we're doing that. I mean, one is how much racing content we're having our racing fans consume on a daily, weekly basis. We've seen a significant increase in that. So among people who've claimed to be horse racing fans, we've seen an increase from 67% to 88% of those people saying they're consuming and following racing on a weekly basis. So there's a significant increase in the frequency of how much time they're spending following our sport. That's one important metric. And our investment in digital media and our relationships with RTE and TG Car on a free-to-air side are definitely helping that. But then there's the other side of things, which is the recruitment vehicle that it can become for ownership, as you rightly say. So, when we ask people to think about ownership, in terms of if you were to park all the other factors of cost and everything else, leaving that aside, how interested would you be in becoming an owner? 40% of the national population and 75% of horse racing fans said they would want to become part of a syndicate or a racing club. Now, we've seen a significant growth in racing clubs and trainers getting involved in syndicates and pushing syndicates more in the last couple of years. That's the breeding ground for the success in the long term of the sport and the industry. That there's a huge opportunity there. I know the ownership team, who you know well, have done an incredible job of making that process a lot easier, from idea right through to signing up with a trainer and making that as seamless as possible. There's huge scope in that.
There is a much greater democracy now about racehorse ownership than perhaps was once the case. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today, and the best of luck in making it all work out of those numbers. Paul Dermody, the CEO of the Horse Racing Ireland Racecourse Division.
Thank you very much, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank you.